just very brief introduction. You're all very welcome. I'm Aidan Lloyd. I'm Vice Chair of the European Anti-Poverty Network in Ireland. And you're very welcome to this Foundations for a Future Europe. I suppose really just Jennifer and Derek will outline the detail of the project, but just to remind people what it's about, the aim is to improve participation of marginalised people, including young people, in policy making, and the primary means is firstly to develop a digital platform for young people and others. Secondly, to develop an open access journal where research resources can be shared. And then thirdly, to promote greater involvement of universities in engaged research. By that we mean research that's directly beneficial to civil society organisations. So it's quite different in that respect. There are two parts, as you know. The first part is the project launch, and we welcome any other than the partner organisations themselves. There are others who are joining us to get a hang on what's going on here and what benefits may arise from it. And just to give a small bit of context before we kick off, because I'm going to pass over to Jennifer and Derek to give an outline of the project, more detailed one than I gave. Just a tiny bit of context. The European Union, as people probably will know by now, is fairly dominated by economics and commerce. It wasn't always like that. There used to be a more integrated approach, which was, a balanced economic and social approach. But because when the social side is, when it's dominated by economics, the people of the European Union become consumers, not creators, and they need desperately to have a part in decision making. And that's what happens when the social side is undervalued. So what we're trying to do in EAPN and other organisations, and I'm sure you would contribute to, is to try and bring that to elevate that social side again. So we need to develop that democratic participation, which is the purpose and the objective of this project, to enable people to be policy contributors. And I think that this project hopefully will be able to assist that objective. So that's broadly what it's about. I'm going to pass over to Derek and Jennifer to give probably a better outline of the project.
Thank you, Aidan. Hello, everybody. It's good to catch up with people I haven't seen in a while, and it's great to see the mixture of people that we have here, because we have higher education, we have community workers, we've got people who are involved in the community already. So it really is a nice mixture of people on screen, and I think this is just the beginning. So it's great to have a launch like this with such a mixture of education, civil society organisations as well. I think everybody, well, I haven't met everybody, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I work for the Department of Adult Education, Adult and Community Education in Maynooth. And one of the things that we do is we like to think about individuals and our experiences and our histories. And at the start of every year, every course I begin, I get people to think about their names. And this is what I wanted to do about this project, because the project itself, the names seem to cause a little bit of consternation, at least within our university, because the idea of futures seem to be ungrammatical. So the Foundations for Futures Europe, and myself and Jennifer and the other consortium partners, I think we've talked about this a little bit. The idea for that name is when you think about the present, and we've already had some of this conversation as we were waiting to start the launch. What concerns people is between the partners talking about the vaccine rollout and the pandemic. Since February, March, I think we had Biljana and Eva in Serbia and Hungary who were already able to get their vaccines, and we're talking about, phone calls that happened the night before. I'm going for mine tomorrow. And the rest of us were in Sweden and Greece and Ireland, were looking on enviously going, we don't know when this is going to happen for us. So in that way, it really hit home that we're not living in the same present. And so the idea that we're living in the same future gives this name, the name for this project, a little bit of, I think, balance that there is going to be more than one future and we're going to experience it differently. As well as that, then the conversation that turned into talking about the weather. And early on again, back in, I think, April, when Jota was talking about, I think it was 30 degrees Celsius in Greece, and Teresa and Catherine were talking about it was still, I think, -16 with snow on the ground, and we were looking at, Paul and Jennifer and myself were looking at the beginning of spring, a wet and windy and showery April, and the vaccine rollout seemed to be as far off as ever. These things coming together made me think about the idea of the name itself is a very apt name, because we don't know what the future holds for us, or we don't know what the futures will hold for us. But this project, in a way, is to try to allow us to imagine ourselves as a European community that will have to tackle some very difficult economic and political and social experiences that we have yet to even think that it could be possible to imagine what these would be like. So the wide spread, the geographic spread of this project means that we have to take all of this from the Atlantic to the Arctic Circle, from the Danube down to the Mediterranean into account. And that's what we hope to capture in this project over the next 18 months up until November of 2022. So I would like to just share with you the way that we as adult educators approach this, and it's going to be very much through dialogue and reflection. And I have a little video that I want to show of how we in the Department of Adult Education think about education and think about the future. Bear with me. And let me know.
I never thought education would be a part of me. I left school at 14.
It's been a really positive experience.
It really changed my life.
Finding my voice.
It inspires people.
You can go at your own pace.
I don't just like it, I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it.
The things that it's not is a series of techniques or things that you do in the classroom.
It's not a learning event like the Leaving Cert.
We would actually encourage people to explore different ways of being and different ways of thinking through knowledge.
A new way for us to reach into individuals' lives and into individuals' communities.
Expanding enriching class.
Transformation.
Welcome to the Department of Adult and Community Education in Maynooth University.
So I hope that gives you some flavour of how the Department of Adult Education are going to approach this project for the next year and a half. And as I said, the things that we have to cope with, whether it's environmental, the consequences of the environmental challenge that lies ahead, or whether it's in the area of disability, of the digital divide, these things we hope that we can capture and communicate from the ground up through projects like the Communiversity and through the modules that we hope to deliver in Maynooth University. I'm going to hand over to Jennifer now, and I think Jennifer is going to talk a little bit about the Experiential Learning Office and the actual deliverables that we hope to achieve.
Thanks, Derek. Hello, everybody. From a rainy room at the back of a house in Naas. So I'm not on campus, so we have images behind us which will give you some idea of our campus. And unfortunately for a lot of us, we haven't been there for at least a year, some of us a year and a half. So we are hoping to be able to go home to our campus at some point, because it is a lovely place to work. So I'm just going to really talk about I suppose, set the scene from the perspective of us as co-leads. Obviously, I don't work in an academic department, but from the end of the video, you will have seen students and students who gave, you know, their perspective and their experience of higher education. So the area of work I'm involved in is teaching and learning, and very much from the student-centered perspective. So I'm just going to do a quick intro into the office that I am from, and our office is the Office of Experiential Learning, which falls under the Office of the Dean of Teaching and Learning. So that kind of covers everything from, we have critical skills across to teaching and learning itself, and careers, a number of other offices all come under this. So the Experiential Learning Office, we have a purpose, and that the work we do is to equip our students for work life and engaged citizenship. So directly or indirectly, we do this by empowering academic departments to deliver high impact experiential learning opportunities. And we do all of these opportunities so that they have a value to all the stakeholders involved. Our strategy that we use very quickly is around, first of all, trying to build a kind of a portfolio of experiential learning opportunities, and I'll show you some of those next. Also to develop sustainable stakeholder partnerships, and then finally to enrich the student experience. So what we're really doing is we're striving to embed opportunities for academic, personal, and professional development across all academic departments, to give all of our students the opportunity to experience real world learning and then to apply their theory to practice. And doing it all in the frame of kind of engagement, to work together with community stakeholders and industry stakeholders as well, because we do cross over the two, to kind of co-create processes, products, ideas and research. And ultimately our aim is to involve our students in contributing to innovation on the one hand in industry, and also to social change. So just quickly, we have a number of programs that I'm involved in delivering, and my colleagues as well. So we're divided kind of, sorry, I'll just go back to slide 3. Sorry, just stick back. So we have a number of programs, and they were, oh, my slide won't stop moving, sorry. They range from career focused employability supports like upskill to co-curricular, I keep losing it, I'm really sorry now, co-curricular awards, summer research programs, and then our community engaged and work related learning. So they all, the role that I'm involved in specifically in the university, and why I suppose I have become involved in the Foundations for Futures Europe, and we've kind of developed this, is the role I have as civic engagement and community partnership. So if you look at the last two, the promoting and supporting student and community engagement, a lot of the work I'm involved in is trying to get academic departments across the university to increase the amount of engagement and to embed some of that community engagement and civic engagement into the curriculum as well. And also I'm involved in supporting new relationships. And I suppose their Foundation for Futures Europe is a new relationship. We didn't originally set out as a group to develop a Europe for Citizens proposal. We actually started off by looking at how community and this idea of communiversity, so where community and university are working together, and I suppose we began with the Horizon 2020. So we then were unsuccessful with our Horizon 2020, but we decided to keep our consortium together, stayed together, and looked at really how Europe for Citizens was also a very good fit, in that we really wanted to look at participative democracy, and we wanted to look at trying to get our students and also communities engaged in policy at European level as well, and having a real input into that and a real say, and to develop engaged research. So If we just look very quickly at the project, our project is a network of higher education and civil society partners, and Maynooth University are the lead university. And as Aidan spoke already, it is about trying to engage and explore common socio-political and economic views and experiences across a range of age groups. So we are looking at every age group and every experience group as well, in terms of European people in general. So the objectives of the project, just really briefly, to engage a diverse range of people from across Europe in a participatory process, and that kind of alludes to the idea of using community education, community development and engaged learning as well, in a process of reflection, with an emphasis on solidarity, and encouraging a collective analysis and an action on a common agenda, policy agenda. Secondly, then, to develop a network and a digital communication platform to facilitate the participation of underrepresented communities and young people across Europe. And thirdly, then, to establish an open access journal to encourage the co-creation of shared resources, and then to encourage the greater involvement of academics, students and communities together in developing engaged research, focusing on participative democracy. Then we have three kind of key deliverables. So I suppose the tangible stuff that's going to come out as a result of this consortium working together in this project. So one is the online platform for community engagement and solidarity. And I suppose we're well on the way with that, in that we do have a website. So that's kind of a beginning. So we do have a few tangible deliverables we've already been able, or hopefully we'll be able to now deliver. Secondly, then, the co-created digital resources for community and higher education. So all of us will be running individual events, and I suppose the output from those individual events will be mixed. Some of our outputs will be digital. They might be videos, they could be case studies, some are going to be research, they could be blogs. So I suppose what we hope to do is take our experience of delivering that stuff and to create a handbook which includes a methodology, which includes a context in relation to the EU and Europe and the European Commission, that kind of thing, and also to then have the resources available to us from across all of our individual events and bring them together to be available online as a digital resource for everybody to use. And finally, then, that idea of the open access journal for community engaged research, which I think for us is something that's long overdue, I think, in the university. So our events, we have collective events, that is the opening symposium that'll happen here in Ireland in November, and hopefully it'll be face to face. So it'll be the first opportunity for us all to actually see each other, I suppose, in the flesh. Make the slides available at the end. But so we have the collective events, and that is the opening symposium in Maynooth in November, followed by a European symposium, which we hope to hold in Hungary in March of next year. And then ending with a final conference in Ireland, which will really mark the culmination of the project. And then, of course, we have individual events that partners are going to run. And I suppose I've grouped them into three areas. So in the first instance, we have what we would call community engaged learning. And that's where it's learning which is kind of heavily connected into communities and delivered within the curriculum within the context of higher education. So the three universities have all developed new community engaged learning initiatives, and they're going to run them on site individually and try and connect together as well, so that our students have the chance to, to talk across these events as well. Then our participative democracy programs, which there are two with the APA in Ireland and the APA in Greece, and they're kind of focused on community development and policy focused. And again, all of these individual events will have the opportunity for groups to connect across. And then finally, our community education, which is kind of outreach, training, education in the community. So for that, we have Ukraft in Sweden, and also Ireland with the Communiversity. So kind of three different approaches and methodologies we're going to use. That's kind of drawn on the strengths of all of the individual partners. And hopefully, as the project is developed, we've kind of explored a number of themes which kind of cut across all of our work and which are kind of common to everyone in Europe, aside from individual themes. So, I mean, if you look at key issues in Ireland, you could say that a key issue for us, other than dealing with the coronavirus at the moment, is the issue of housing. but that probably is not a key issue for Sweden, perhaps, and it may not be a key issue in Hungary, for example. But there are a number of key issues that cut across. So if you can move to the next slide, Irene, I will just name those kind of 5 issues that we have already had a bit of a discussion about, and which kind of framed our application at the outset. So the first of those was really a digital divide, and interestingly enough, our whole conversation about digital inclusion and that divide which now exists in society happened before COVID, and I suppose was compounded as we tried to move over to remote teaching and learning and to remote engagement with communities, which was really challenging and difficult for some of our community development organizations. So difficult enough for any of us who are quite advantaged, even within a big university. It was a struggle, and not everyone reaped a benefit from it, and not everyone had the same level of skills. So we really began to see how technological skills or expertise are also a form of kind of capital as well. So they're almost like social capital, in that having them will enable you to be more, to participate and to get access to more kind of services as well. In that, an awful lot of our social services across Europe have moved to digitally, engagement, and that is a real challenge, I suppose. Secondly, then, the populism really, and the growth of Euroscepticism, which is a key theme in Europe for citizens, and an ideation behind our kind of project too. Then 3 is, I suppose, the whole issue of inequality, and the idea that Europe has a role, and has always had a role, in trying to determine a kind of a social agenda, values, and the European ideals. And we find it now being challenged if you just look at what's happened over the last couple of months and year around LGBTQ plus rights and stuff, and how they're being eroded in some of our member states, and just the role of Europe there. So we've had a lot of discussions about gender, race, citizenship, and stuff like that. Fourth, I suppose, then, is the whole idea of social exclusion always being there in the shadow of European economic progress, and progress at any cost, or I suppose we've often discussed how despite the perceived advances in Europe, and the kind of striving to get industrial integration and integration generally, we forget that social exclusion is the one factor which has the largest impact in holding inequality, and in creating injustice all across Europe. And unless you challenge it, and unless you actually tackle social exclusion, are you going to make any progress at all, really? Finally, then, I suppose, with everything that's happened recently in Germany and all over the world globally, is the idea of how we respond to the climate crisis. And for some of us, the climate change won't have as big an impact as for others, and really the idea of climate justice has been central on our minds as well, because clearly, if you have the means to go and have an electric car, and to move to insulate your house really well, it's great, and you can be contributing, but really it's kind of failing the groups who are most excluded in society, and who ultimately are the people who are impacted the most from human-induced climate change and climate events. So some of those are just cross-cutting themes that we probably will reflect on at a later stage. So I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Derek, and thanks, Jennifer. Okay, so we're a wee bit behind, so we'll move promptly on to the next piece, which is a brief project partners, each project partner presenting an overview of the project and the concept that ties it together with their project plan. So it's about 3 minutes, and there's some videos and there's some PowerPoint presentations with the live input. Can I just say at the outset that just to remember that while there are cross-cutting objectives, and they're clear and concrete, and Jennifer has outlined them there, there are also thematic groups where people have shared interests in as a subset of the project, But it's important not to forget the kind of cross-thematic nature of things. You know, what we learn from other people, what we're surprised by in terms of something we didn't think about at the offset, but that is interesting and that we could apply in our own project somewhere else. So it's very rarely that you'll have a European partnership meeting that you won't pick up at least one good idea. So hopefully that will happen during this process. So we'll start off, will we start off with the Hellenic Anti-Poverty Network from Greece? And I understand that that's video.
There's no volume.
Can people hear it?
No, you need to turn the volume on.
You need to, that share sound, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, hold on now.
Okay.
What did I do wrong?
You might need to go out and start the share screen and then share sound and then go back in.
Sorry, I'm just... Share, okay, sorry, I'll just do that again.
Yeah.
Share sound, right. Share, okay, go again. Share. Please.
Organization across Greece and its founding member.
Yeah.
Established 30 years ago, the Hellenic Anti-Poverty Network, more known as Greek Anti-Poverty Network, consists of 35 member organizations across Greece and its founding member of the European Anti-Poverty Network. It monitors European, regional and national policies regarding the eradication of poverty, the support of vulnerable groups, and it lobbies and advocates for social protection and empowerment. Since its establishment, the Hellenic Anti-Poverty Network has been working on social policy at the national and EU level, engaging with the Europe 2020 strategies, the European semester process, the European Pillar of Social Rights, and the UN Global Goals. One of its core activities is the active participation of people experiencing poverty in public dialogue with the national and European authorities concerning social policy. Every year we publish the annual report on poverty, better known as National Poverty Watch, that includes not only statistics but also the input of civil society organizations and people who face discrimination and live on the borderline of poverty and exclusion. This is our main reason for participating in the Foundation for Future's Europe project. Participative democracy is our challenge.
In the framework of the Foundation for Future Europe project, the Hellenic Anti-Poverty Network will organize a series of workshops with 10 to 15 people from vulnerable groups and experts, entitled Participative Democracy, Planning the Future for a Social Europe. The composition of the group seeks to promote the involvement and active participation of vulnerable groups. In this way, we can better understand the problem and propose more resilient and sustainable recommendations for a socially inclusive Europe. By listening in to those who experience daily poverty and social exclusion and who express their own needs for a dignified life, we make sure that no one is left behind. The group will address important factors of poverty and social, economic and political inequalities in Greece and Europe. Its purpose is to collect data, best practices and personal experience that will help towards the strengthening of a social Europe. At the end of the implementation period of the project, the Hellenic Anti-Poverty Network will organize a European conference. There, we will present the recommendation deriving from the data collated and in the workshop towards local, regional and European authorities. And all this because the future depends on what you do today, as Mahatma Gandhi said once.
Is that okay? We move on to the next input, which is from the University of Pécs, am I right?
Yes, yes.
In
right.
Hungary, and that's a video and a live input.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Aidan. I hope that the video is going to work. And I had a very short presentation with the Prezi. I had just sent to Anin because I realized that I'm not able to project since I'm not the host. We don't hear this. Oh, okay, it's working. Thank you, Irene.
Age comes experience. As one of the oldest universities in the world, at the University of Pécs, we have learned that when you have all the resources at your disposal, you can achieve great things. Where you choose to study can steer the direction of your future and determine the path of your success. Uncover and grow your potential and immerse yourself in great adventures along the way. In one of the European capitals of culture. Discover something new and exciting every day in the borderless city, where possibilities are only bound by your imagination. Grow, flourish, and explore a world of possibilities at the University of Pécs.
Thank you, Irene. And I also have a few slides to present about the activities planned. As you could see, we have a nice marketing about our city in the south of Hungary, 200 kilometers from Budapest. And we are a European capital for culture. We have a great and very well-established university dating back to 1367, so one of the oldest in Europe. However, this is the one side of the coin, but the other side of the coin is that after the fall of regime of 1989, we have been suffering from structural economic breakdown since heavy industry was planted here in the mountains. We have resources of coal, but after the changes, there has been no reconstruction of the economy So basically, even though we have a great cultural and scientific background, we are a very disadvantaged region. So that's why with my colleagues, Dr. Ines Koller and Adrian Kismárton, who are also here, myself is Eva Szederkényi, are very happy to join and contribute to the project. Since we do have a lot to do and facilitate here in our region. Irene, I don't know whether you have the slides I have sent over in the chat. If you allow me 2 more minutes, then we can have the presentation shared. Okay. Would it work, Irene, or should I continue without the slides?
Yeah, just hold on. It should be okay.
Sorry about that. I just realized that I cannot present since I'm not a co-host.
Okay.
So just going back to the roots of my thought of line. The disadvantaged groups here in the south of Hungary are definitely the Roma population and the elderly people. The average pension for Hungarian elderly is about 300 euros, so it's quite a challenge to live on. This amount of money. Our university is very active in the senior academy to involve elderly people in lifelong learning, and there are also civic societies in the region who are living best practices. The other underprivileged marginalized group is, of course, the unskilled workers or those who are suffering from the crisis of the coronavirus. And we also have compulsory workers who are working for 160 euros on government decrees. This is a means by supporting the people who are without jobs, or the jobless people. We have a minor marginalized group of homeless people, usually those who are divorced and they are male. And also we have challenges women, specifically those who are unskilled. So what are the activities planned? Can you see my slides?
No.
You can share your own screen, Maeve, if you want.
Can I?
Yeah, yeah.
So great. Just give me a sec. All right, so I have been talking about marginalized groups. The events planned, I don't know what is the state at the moment with the elective course, but I have already Neptune codified the codes for the elective course that we are planning with Derek and Biljana for 2 semesters involving lecturers and practitioners from the universities of Maynooth, Novi Sad and University of Pécs, but also we are planning to invite people who are working in the field of social welfare. The second activity planned are world cafes on active citizenship and on being part of the community, since the Euroscepticism in Hungary is relatively high, as we have discussed it, I think, with Biljana. sometime the same issue with the Serbia. So we try to invite people to have a dialogue about active citizenship, not just having it, you know, as a buzzword, but really to have a meaning about its strengths and opportunities. One of the things that we plan is to initiate a dialogue between Hungarian students and international students who would tell about their European experiences, and to have you know, a mindset, different mindset. Also, we have a community workshop and conference which would be definitely involving correspondence students who are a bit marginalized, since they are working usually full-time, and even though they are very active, but they cannot contribute to social activities much. And also we are targeting our senior academy students aged from 65. We have 800 students registered each year for the senior academy. So we would like to have a think tank about how community education can facilitate marginalized groups, specifically the Roma population. We also plan a tactical game in the city, a city escape game with Ines, my colleague, commemorating the Hungarian Revolution of the 19th century, which was very much fought for the European ethos of cooperation and dialogue, transnational dialogue between European countries. The whole concept of the map would be designed by our students, and this would be a sort of a team building tactical game, and it's going to be placed in Peach. But if it's going to work, it's going to be a pilot, then we would definitely transfer the game to other smaller towns in the region, like Szekerd, which has also a faculty, and Alsó-Mocsolád, which is a very small village, but the best practice for maintaining strength and economic growth, even in a very disadvantaged region. Thank you very much for listening. Köszönjük szépen. This is in Hungarian, and I hope that we can meet soon in person as well. Thank you sorry for the technical downfall.
Thank you very much, Eva. Thank you, very interesting. Will we move on now to the European Anti-Poverty Network in Ireland, Paul Ginnell?
Thanks, Aidan. Yeah. Yeah, like all the other partners, it's good to be here. It's good to get the project started. So as Aidan said, my name is Paul Ginnell. I'm the director of the European Anti-Poverty Network in Ireland. And we're happy to be a partner in this project. Very similar to EAPN Greece, where Jutta presented. EAPN Ireland is also one of the founding members of EAPN Europe in 1990, and we're still very much involved in the network at the European level. Our own mission is to put the eradication of poverty at the top of the Irish and European policy agenda and empower groups working to end poverty, to understand and influence poverty making. So currently we have around 170 local and national anti-poverty groups or organizations, and a number of individuals who are members, and we support them or work with them through training, information, taking collective action, and then networking across a range of issues. Similarly, I suppose, to EAPN Greece as well, we work across a lot of the European strategies that have been developed over the last number of decades, such as the Europe 2020 strategy, which had a poverty target within it, the European semester process, which had an economic lead, but tried to integrate social and environmental policy within that. And now working on so the EU plans around recovery and resilience in the context of recovering from COVID-19, and looking at a new ambition for what can be achieved at the European level. Also, and the pillar of social rights, which is a key priority socially currently at Europe. So overall, I suppose, involved in creating a more social Europe free of poverty as the ambition for our organisation. As was said earlier as well, the participation of people experiencing poverty is key to how we work at both the national and European level, and ensuring that I suppose people's voice is heard and is respected in policy making. Some of the things that we're involved in currently, I suppose, are the implementation of Ireland's social inclusion strategy, lobbying government to ensure that minimum incomes or welfare levels are set at a level that's adequate for people to live with dignity. We've done recent work in relation to health inequality. We're campaigning for the ground of socioeconomic discrimination, or you could say class, to be recognised as a ground for discrimination in Irish equality legislation, and then also the implementation of the Pillar of Social Rights and the Sustainable Development Goals. In the project itself, in the Foundations for Future Europe project itself, very much we're looking at building on the work we do in linking with marginalised communities and linking them to development of EU policy and for using their lives to inform policy development at a European level. So next year in the spring, we'll be organising 3 to 4 local events in communities, linking with the universities in Maynooth a little bit in relation to this as well. So working from people's own lived experience and their understanding of the EU to engage them in a discussion and debate on their, views or their vision for the future of Europe and how it can become a more social Europe. And also contributing to the common work of the European partners as well in the online digital platforms, in contributing our, experience and expertise in working with communities to make sure that what we develop is accessible for all and also is inclusive for those who are most marginalised. So we look forward to getting started and engaging in the project as we go along. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. That's very good. We're now going to go to Derek in Maynooth University. And Derek, I understand it's a verbal input.
Yeah, thanks, Aidan. Yeah, I think a lot of what I'm going to say, Jennifer has covered. So hopefully I'm just going to flesh it out a bit and we can get back on track. One of the things that I've noticed is what we have in common. And I'm having my own difficulties here now with my technology. Sorry, 1 second. But to let you know, the first thing that we plan to do in Maynooth is on the 19th of November. We have the opening symposium, and there we will have inputs from the European Anti-Poverty Network and from the Sanctuary University, as well as we hope to have some roundtables on issues that we've already mentioned here: poverty, disability, migration, the issues that we think are going to form part of the cross-cutting themes that Jennifer has outlined. So that's to be held on the 19th of November. Invitations will be sent out to our community partners through the Communiversity Network and through other education and community networks. So I guess what we're hoping for there is that we can have members of the community sector and members of the general public can join us on campus. What we'd really like to do is, for the first time, to meet all of the partners, if we could, in person. So we're planning for that weekend to be able to bring the members of the consortium together as well. So that's an exciting prospect for us for November. The second part of what we plan is based around the communiversities. And if people, I know that Asha is here from the South Dublin Partnership. The South Dublin Partnership have been involved in the communiversity for years. So have the North Side Partnership in Dublin. We're hoping that both of them will come on board for next spring, and as well as a rural, possibly the Kildare Leader Partnership Company. The communiversity works on a partnership basis, and we have community actors, we have the local libraries, we have a great library system in Ireland. Every county has a county librarian. Bigger towns and major cities have a really good public library service. And they are really a hub within local communities for education to take place. So it's a great resource for the universities and for our community partners to get into local communities and bring academics out to talk about the things that we think are going to crop up for us over the next 18 months on this. But again, it's really that space for people to be able to communicate, for the conversation to start, because I think more than anything else, that's what this project is about. It's about the conversation, and part of that conversation is listening. So instead of being prescriptive, this is what we think, and this is what I think is key about this project as well. I think that the whole Brexit debate has really, and what happened with Britain leaving the EU has really made the powers that be in the European Union think again about the people that are on the ground and people feeling like they're being left behind. They say they want to listen, and so we're going to give people the platform to be heard. That's what we plan to do through this project. And that's what we're going to try and do through the communiversities. So that's planned for, we hope to start those in January. So we'll be recruiting in the autumn. By January, we're hoping that restrictions will be lifted and we can be back into local libraries to have 25 people in a setting where debate and conversation can take place. The second part of what we plan to do in Maynooth has to do with these elective modules that Eva has spoken about, and we're almost there in Maynooth, and anybody who works in the university knows that these are juggernauts, that it can take a long time to get something approved through academic council, but I think we're almost there, and it looks like a very exciting prospect to have 25 second year students looking at things from classical Greece, the idea of democracy and the idea of xenia and xenophobia, up to Brexit and beyond, to understand and try to think about what kind of future we can have. So in the first semester, that's an academic-based program, and in the second semester, we hope to be able to tie it in with what Paul was talking about, those workshops, those community workshops, participative democracy, and in with the communiversity people as well. So that's an exciting prospect, I think, for students in second year in the university, and really it would be great if we can link up with our European partners for some, if not all of those sessions in the coming year. And finally, then we have the November 2022, that's the closing conference that will take place in Maynooth University. Again, we hope at that stage we can have all the partners together, and there we can start to look through or wrap up the project, but also look through the learning and the data that we've taken, that we've gathered over the previous 18 months, and make some sense out of the whole thing, but actually to be able to, at times throughout the project, but at that stage, have had some serious input into a social Europe and the conversation around it. So that's what we plan to do over the next, up until November 2022. I don't think I've left anything out. Jennifer, have I? Thumbs up or?
Yeah, no.
Okay, that's great. Thanks a lot, Aidan.
Thanks, Derek. Okay, so we swiftly move on to Urkraft in Sweden, an organization I know very well.
Okay, I don't need to share. You share, Irene. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, you could just skip to the next slide. I'm going to show you exactly where we are situated in Sweden. Oh, you could. Oh, is it? You can
go
just
on. Yes, go on.
Just, yes, because I didn't realize that. Yes, and just keep going till I say stop. Just keep going. Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's perfect. The location we kept, as you can see, we're in the northern part of Sweden. I made the star very, very big, contrary to Stockholm, but Skellefteå is a very small city. It's about 35,000 people living in the city center and about 70,000 in the whole municipality. As you can see, the region of Västerbotten is quite big. Actually, it contains of forests, and lots of rivers. So we have a lot of green energy here in Skellefteå, and you can see how you pronounce it. It's almost like she left you. That is actually how you pronounce Skellefteå. So we are a very big expansion area due to the green energy. The largest battery factory in Europe is going to be built here in Skellefteå, and we think it will generate about 8,000 to 10,000 more jobs here. So the unemployment rate will be almost non-existent. It's already almost non-existent. And that is very good, you could say, but it also leaves a lot of people behind. So there will be, I think there will be about 1,000 people here that will be left out of this expansion due to disabilities, due to being asylum seekers, immigrants, due to having neuropsychiatric disabilities, for example. And so the target group that we work with will need a lot of support to be able to get jobs in future, I think. So you can skip to the next picture. And just skip ahead a bit. Yeah, the name Urkraft, for example, it means that everyone has an inherent power. It's a lot of the empowerment thought. And we were founded in 1988, and I think we are one of the oldest social enterprises in Sweden, actually. Due to our history, we worked a lot with learning by doing. We had our own TV station, we had a bakery, we had a restaurant, we had an athletic center, a conference center, we made a street festival, and we had about 500 people in our organization every year, mostly young people, unemployed young people, that could be involved in that kind of things that we were creating. But in 2005, there was a big change within the Swedish labor market strategy from the government, and we couldn't work with the same things that we had been doing. So we had to change a lot. We moved to the campus area with the university, and you can skip to the next picture. Yeah, and we had to adapt to the change, and we had to develop a lot, and we had to create a more flexible organization. So you could go to the next picture, please. And just go ahead until I say stop. Yeah, that's right. So we're now a social enterprise, and we provide vocational education and training to disadvantaged target groups. We are currently 16. We will probably be one more very soon. The people working for us are social workers, teachers, and counselors. About 25% of the workforce are living with their own disability of some sort, being on the autism spectrum, for example, or having mental health problems. Our learning groups are school dropouts, long-term unemployed, people on long-term sick leave, and people with neuropsychiatric disabilities and mental health problems. We have about 250 and 300 people annually coming to our premises. And we have a lot of experience and competence in development of educational materials to provide support for our target group. So we work very closely to the adult education, for example, and higher education and upper secondary school, but also with other organizations working with the target groups. So you can go to the next. Yes, thank you. So we are now working on developing support in education for people with neuropsychiatric disabilities and mental illness with the supported education model. I'm not sure if that is a model or method that is used in your countries, but supported education is getting quite a popular method to use in Sweden. It's a bit close to supported employment, but here it's more focusing on the educational situation. So our study center, that is called Texas, and Texas is not because we fancy Texas in US. it's actually a short for the target groups that we are working with in Swedish. But that gives support to students on different educational levels, upper secondary schools, adult education, higher education, such as university programs, etc. But it's people that needs extra support in finishing their programs and getting an exam, for example. So the municipality of Skellefteå is actually paying us to be this support structure for the people in need. We have been working with different partner organizations at a European level for more than 25 years. I think it's even more than that, actually. And we have large networks of partners in the educational sector as well as in the corporate and government sectors in Sweden. So I think we are quite famous in Sweden, even though we're not situated in Stockholm, which is the common place to be for such an actor. So you can move to the next. So this is our part in the project. We are, Bolis, perhaps you will like to step in. You're actually going
I can do that.
Involved with this part.
Yeah, our target group was they felt that they was left out of the society. So we had a project that we worked with, owning your city, and had that perspective that they will be more involved in the town and the city, and everything was happen. And now we feel that this is so interesting because now we can move on to owning your Europe in this project. So we will have workshops, we will explore the educational, how they are going together with and what they know about Europe, and how they feel that they are a part of it. And it's very important for our organization to work with the democracy in front of our eyes all the time that we are working with people. So we feel this is an opportunity to work more and have more workshops together with the people that we meet, and see how they can feel to own the Europe. Is very interesting also for me as working at Eurocraft. So do you have something more, Therese, that you want?
Yeah, I think it's really important, because we could see with the Brexit, I think Sweden is also a bit divided. One part of people thinking that we are going to have a Swexit, like we should leave the European Union. And on the other hand, there are people that are more into the European thought now because of Brexit, that we see what kind of benefits we could actually have and learn from each other. And I've been working at Urkraft for 20 years almost, and I can tell you that we have never been able to stay in business or be able to develop as we have if we haven't had this European outlook and learn from other European countries. I think a lot of Swedish people tend to see like we are enough as we are in our country, and I can see that we have a lot to learn from anyone else. And I think that it's really important that we also teach this to or work with inclusiveness within the European thought with our learners, and not only as Sweden have a Swedish identity, but also as a European. So I think this is really important. And our events that we are trying to establish for the upcoming year will be, first we are going to gather about 30 to 40 of our learners into a workshop and explore what do they feel, what do they need to know, and what do they want to learn more about the European thought, for example. And then we're going to create small mini events with small workshops that will build on the previous workshop and the wills from the people that participated. And then in May, on the European Day, we are going to work together with the municipality and their European office, and perhaps have our representative from the Commission also participating at a bigger conference that we are going to host in cooperation with our municipality. So that is kind of the plans that we have for now for the project. So I think
and it's very interesting. Yeah, you can finish it.
No, I was actually just going to say thank you very much. That was the last slide.
Okay, thanks, Teresa. Just to say that the Dolores vision of Europe in the early years was the Nordic model. So please don't leave.
No, we will not leave. But being in the northern Sweden actually was very opposed to the European Union thought when we entered the EU in '95. So it's really interesting to have this perspective. But I think that most people now, when you see two different when you see the debate in Sweden now, I think actually the pro-Europe part is bigger than the part that roots for a Brexit. So that is good.
Yeah. And I feel that I was going to say is that it's been very interesting in this virus time. You see that Sweden have still a lot of things to learn from Europe, and still things that can be better.
We all have.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, we'll come to University of Novi Sad in Serbia.
Yes.
And I think that's live. It's a live input.
Yes, it's live, and also I have a presentation which I can share.
Okay.
So hello everyone, I'm Biljana, and I am pleased to introduce the Faculty of Philosophy from University of Novi Sad. As the last partner in this presentation and project, as it is said in our country, sugar comes at the end. So I hope it will be like that. Just kidding, of course. I will share presentation so you can see just a couple of my pictures. So I will start with, this is like Cyrillic letters, official, also the Latin one is in Serbia, so just for you to see. And I will start with the city of Novi Sad. It is the second largest city in Serbia and the capital of northern part of Vojvodina. And the city and the province of Vojvodina is really widely famous by its multiculturalism, as it has 6 official languages. And all of those communities have their own primary and secondary education, media, television, cultural centers, political participation on their native languages. So it really, decades ago, was the like a role model for other multicultural communities. Besides that, Novi Sad is also an official European Capital of Culture for 2022, which can be also useful for this project as well. And it was pronounced the European Youth Capital in 2019. It is also the home of the second largest university in Serbia, which is really huge. It has more than 50,000 students and more than 5,000 teaching staff. So the Faculty of Philosophy, which is the partner in this project, is just a part of this huge university. And you will see the faculty is also very large. As you can see, this is the building of the faculty. And it lies on the bank on the river Danube. So it's quite challenging to organize lectures during summer semester, since all the students are just watching through the window and just want to be outside. But it's really a beautiful area around the faculty. So it is also a huge faculty that has around 5,000 students and around 4,000 teaching staff, 400, sorry. So we have more than 50 different study programs on all 3 levels, like bachelor, master, and PhD level. So here you can just see different social science, like pedagogy, philosophy, sociology, history, journalism, social work, cultural studies, and also the philology part, where students can learn different languages and literature. From the Europeans one, like English, French, German, Russian, Italian, Spanish, to the more local ones and the regional ones like Slovak, Romanian, Hungarian, and so on. But what is unique about the faculty, and it is connected to this project, since we do offer foreign elective courses also for the general public, not only for students, but also as a program of lifelong learning. So it is interesting that we also offer courses like Farsi language, Japanese, Hindi, Korean, Chinese, Portuguese, and other interesting. So we do dance between the West and the East, as the city, as the country itself does. But we offer, like I said, a combination of Western, local, regional, and Eastern cultures and literature. So concerning this, so this is the first Confucius Institute at the University of Novi Sad, first Hindi chair in Serbia, Francophone University, Portugal, and so on. Faculty has different centers, and the most important one for this project is the Center for Student Support. And through the wider community development and cooperation, we will also deliver activities within this project. So I will just say that the idea is to organize a couple of events which will be open to public, so that general public can also participate at the university campus and hear about all the democratic values and European values. It was pretty interesting to hear this discussion about some countries are eager to leave the European Union. On the other hand, some are eager to join the European Union. So we have really different perspectives. Of course, Serbia is also quite divided about that, since you do have those people who think that no, we shouldn't join the European Union, and of course the other half which actually thinks that we should be part of the European Union. But as Eva already mentioned, the situation in Hungary, it is also the situation in Serbia. The Euroscepticism is increasing in the last couple of years, especially with young people. So the main object for our part of the project and activities is to engage students into the community learning and community engagement to tackle those issues and democratization, like inclusion of people, like freedom of speech, media reporting, and Euroscepticism. So we will create different projects so the students can actually learn by doing and learning through community engagement. And after that, we plan to make a huge event like presentation of their work. So we will see how it will end up. Of course, we will have to adjust according to the situation with the virus and so on. So I hope we will succeed all together with all of those very interesting and useful aims and ambitious. So thank you everyone for listening and for your attention. And I'm really hoping for and looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Biljana. So we're running a little bit over time, well, a good bit over time, as you'd expect. So we now have we'll have an opportunity to have some dialogue around the different inputs that people made today, because they're very interesting, fascinating, different, and yet some real common themes coming out, and some sort of gloomier background ones as well, like Euroscepticism. But can we move to the presentation launch of the project logo and social media tools? Is that Robin?
Yeah. So hi everyone. I'm kind of working with the marketing communication side of things in Maynooth for the project. So I'm just going to show you the logo that we have and speak a bit about how the logo was chosen. We can move on to the next slide. So the idea emerged from lots of conversations and reflections about the name Foundations for Futures Europe. The tree, as a symbol of life, has many expressions, and every partner had a version that spoke to their own past. So the tree as a logo has meaning from all the different roots that it can have, that are separate but essential to sustain the unity of the trunk and the conduit to the individual branches bearing fruit and producing food for the organism as a whole to survive. So none can exist without the other, and our interdependency becomes obvious. This has been the European experience since the end of the Second World War and the establishment of the European Coal and Steel Pact. So I'm just going to show you some of the social media content. So this is just something I made about the partners. So this is Maynooth University. We have some history here, and then some pictures of the brand and the logo. And I'm hoping to do that for each partner. On the next slide, just an example of some stuff I made for the project launch. And then continuing on, we have the Instagram. I just said I'd show everyone what they look like in case you want to follow them. That's the Instagram there. And next we have the Twitter, I think. Yeah, and I have the hashtag FFE project if anyone would like to tweet about the any activities that are happening. And then we have the Facebook page, which is great for setting up events and inviting people. And then next we have the LinkedIn, which we have linked to our website, which Kieran is going to speak about now, and the work he's been doing on our www.ffeproject.eu website.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all here today. My name is Kieran, and I oversaw the development of the project's website. I'm just going to give you a little rundown of the progress that we made. So we underwent significant development into the website, and it's currently it's finally ready to be launched at ffeproject.eu. I'd like to highlight the .eu as we chose it to be more inclusive of the European identity instead of just .ie or equivalent. We tried to focus on information and interactivity for the website. So information about the project and partners, and obviously interaction for discussion and publication. I can also highlight that we made a mobile version, and that's also ready to be launched today. If you could continue on to the next slide. So I'd just like to give you some visuals on the website itself. So on the left-hand side there, we can see the homepage itself. It's mainly the hub for everything that the website is. It links to everything on the main website, and you can see there's a bit about the aim and the partners there. At the top right there, you can see the navigation bar, which is meant to be as accessible as possible to get people to different parts of the website and the platform as easy as possible and easy to understand. And on the bottom right there, you can just see some informational pages about the project, the timeline, and a bit about each partner. On the next slide, on the left there, you can see we also implemented functionality for a members area and a members chat to try and engage members to sign up and to talk to each other, and it's just a convenience feature. And in the bottom right there, you can see there's membership where you can create a profile and make posts. And probably one of the most important features is the forum for engagement. You can see there at the top right where people can come on and discuss things about the European Union and really just get people engaged. On the next slide, I can show off the mobile version. Again, it's kind of similar thing there as before, but it's just so that everyone has the convenience and the accessibility of accessing the website. And there's a big focus on really accessibility. You can see in the center there, the drop-down menu, and everything that needs to be there is there. And you can see it linking to social media as well. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I hope this gives an overview of the project.
Okay, so what I propose to do to try and make up the time, thanks very much for that input, both those inputs on the logo and the platform. what I propose to do now, to try and pick up some of the time, is maybe to leave the questions and answers for the moment to go into the presentation on the policy context by Paul Ginnell. And then some of the questions, I think, will emerge in the discussion that will follow that. And I think Paul has a few questions which might prompt that discussion anyway, and people can join in if that's okay. Is that okay for people that we proceed in that manner? It's been really interesting so far. We need to hold that kind of dynamic, if you like. Paul, do you want to go ahead then?
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Aidan. Yeah, so I think hopefully people can see my screen. So I try not to be too long because I think some of the issues I'm highlighting here have already been raised, I think, as well. I suppose it's in terms of the context that we've been talking about the I suppose, what is the overarching vision of the project? What are we trying to achieve? What type of debate are we trying to encourage? So this presentation is I suppose, a way of trying to give some context to that and then lead us into a discussion afterwards. So just the overarching vision of the so in terms of the EU is created, I don't know if people can see the top of the screen, I can't see it myself. So the Schuman Declaration in 1950, I suppose, was the initiator of the EU. So Robert Schuman was the French Prime Minister at the time, but he had a vision, or along with a number of other people after the war, that there must be a way of working together and bonding different, I suppose, countries and leaders together in a way that would mean that they would be, I suppose, have some common interest and less likely, I suppose, to end up in conflict, as had been the experience in the previous decades. So the idea was that, I suppose for him, then the declaration that Europe would not be made all at once according to a single plan, but it's about the achievements, about building together and having that solidarity of working together that would bond them together. And that resulted in the European Coal and Steel Community in 1951, which was I suppose, the beginnings of what is now known as the European Union. And it had 6 founding members, as you can see there. So then I suppose another thing to highlight, which is really key and sometimes get missed because of some of when you see the EU in action, sometimes the values that it has that are in the treaties of the European Union are not very clear. And I think sometimes it's very important to remind ourselves what they are. So in the treaty, it says that the Union is founded on the values of respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect for human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities. These values are common to member states in a society in which pluralism, non-discrimination, tolerance, justice, solidarity, and equality between men and women prevail. So that, I think, often gets lost in the nitty-gritty discussion about EU and what it does on a day-to-day basis. And it's important, I think, always to bring ourselves back to that vision. Just trying to outline some sort of a timeline in relation to how the EU social vision evolved. It was very bumpy along the way. A lot of the social objectives of the EU are linked to actually around employment rights and the common, the balanced playing field in terms of trade and so on that the EU tried to create. And the social has been coming in behind that in some ways, and we're slow to develop, and more around EU leaders deciding to work together on common objectives as opposed to hard law. But in the Treaty of Rome, equal pay for equal work, equal pay, so equal pay for equal work in terms of mainly in gender equality was a key part of that, and that's been there since the beginning of the EU. In the 1970 to 1992, countries began to work together on the poverty programme. There were 3 poverty programmes looking at issues around I suppose things like idea of social inclusion, partnership, community development, and different ideas like that were developed and working collectively to bring about change. But in the 1990s, the British and German governments said that the EU didn't have competence around this issue, so shouldn't be working on it. So the Ford programme didn't go ahead. But then in 1997, the Treaty of Amsterdam reinserted, I suppose, that importance of being able to work together on certain things such as poverty. So It was part of the Amsterdam Treaty, and very much important in that as well was the competence to work commonly on discrimination. So we have discrimination directives since then in relation to both the workplace and broadly in terms of access to services. And the Amsterdam Treaty also enabled countries then collectively to work together around common issues where they would not necessarily have law, but could collectively work together for better outcomes for people in relation to social inclusion, employment in other areas as well. In 2000, the Charter of Fundamental Rights was agreed, which is a broader set of principles and values, and that became legally binding in the Lisbon Treaty in 2009. From 2000 to 2010, there was the Lisbon Strategy, which countries worked together according to that coordination, which was agreed in the Amsterdam Treaty. So they worked together, including in relation to poverty, because the Lisbon Strategy had a commitment to make a decisive impact on poverty by 2010, and countries worked together towards the common objectives in relation to that. When that ended then in 2010, there was the Europe 2020 strategy with a number of objectives also, with countries working together. And there was a specific poverty reduction target included in that, which was to reduce poverty and social exclusion by at least 20 million people by 2020. By the 2020, of course, the economic crisis had hit at that time. So the EU failed to reach its target, probably achieved a reduction of about 10 million by 2020, by last year. So this is a slide that was taken from EAPN's Poverty Watch, which Jutta mentioned earlier on, because at each EAPN national member did a Poverty Watch, and they were created into a European Common Report. So this slide highlights some of the key common issues across the EU in relation to poverty and social exclusion. I suppose it's very clear in terms of the groups that are more impacted by poverty and social exclusion, that are greater at risk. Also, overall, that some countries experience higher levels of poverty and social exclusion. And what stood out was particularly Bulgaria, Romania, and Greece in relation to the experience in those countries. And some of the common issues were around, I suppose, the fact that inadequate incomes was a key issue across member states, that being in work was important, but it wasn't sufficient to keep people out of poverty because there was a lot of in-work poverty. Issue of housing and the cost of housing and the overburden of housing costs was a key issue driving people into poverty. And so the common statement was that social benefits overall in terms of social supports help reduce poverty and social exclusion and work alongside work and access to services in terms of creating that. So then in terms of what are some of the common the current commitments of the EU, what's happening currently in the EU in terms of the areas they're working on. The Pillar of Social Rights was agreed in 2017, 20 employment and social principles, which all member states and EU institutions have signed up to. And earlier this year, there was an action plan agreed in relation to Pillar of Social Rights with a new commitment to reduce poverty and social exclusion by 20 million people by 15 million people by 2030, and that has to include 5 million children, and a child guarantee is part of that, very much looking at particularly in relation to children in terms of access to services and support services and so on. So that sits there as a kind of the current social objective at a European level, the Pillar of Social Rights. But I suppose in many ways that the two key areas that the EU is working on currently are both the digital and climate transitions, and they dominate quite a lot currently. There are lessons learned from COVID-19, and they will impact on how those different objectives get implemented. But I suppose it's from a social point of view, it's how the digital transition and the climate transition work for people in low incomes, people who are marginalised, and people living in poverty, to ensure that they can benefit and don't lose out in relation to these, and recognise the specific issues impacting on people from marginalised communities in relation to those areas. And then the EU has a major fund and programme, the Recovery and Resilience programme, the plan and facility to invest in implementing those commitments but also in trying to overcome some of the challenges created by COVID-19. So that's the current, I suppose, commitments of the EU, and it's how they're implemented is key in terms of addressing inequality in the EU and ensuring that we create a more equal and fair EU. So some of the questions, I suppose, that arise from all of that is, I suppose, in terms of the values that I highlighted earlier, that in the EU treaties, just is the EU living up to its values? They're very strong, but often I think, feel that the EU is not really focusing on some of those areas. It's focusing on other issues, on economic or competitiveness areas, and not as often on social values and human rights. And then I suppose there is a consultation ongoing now in terms of because they've called the Conference on the Future of Europe, which is looking at what type of a Europe do we want, how strong do we want the EU to be, what kind of common areas can we work on better together. And that's kind of bringing up a lot of debate and discussion about the EU that we want and the type of Europe that we want and who wants to be part of that. Often when people say they don't want to be part of Europe or the Europe skeptic, it's actually about the type of Europe that we have and the vision that we're working towards, and people's buy-in to that. And key in all of this is who has a say, whose voices do we hear in terms of the creation of that Europe, the creation of the type of Europe that we want, how inclusive are those voices, and how to get heard is very important. And that's something that this project is very much focusing on. So I think it's very interesting in terms of hearing what different partners are going to do in relation to this, and ensure that people who are on the margins of our society have a say and try and have an input into the type of Europe that we have going forward. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so at this point we have about 10 to 15 minutes probably for a bit of discussion, and Paul has put some points out there, in particular what is our vision for Europe into the future, because there are deep and worrying issues arising around climate change, around Euroscepticism, around the strength of European health system, etc., in an era of COVID. So I'll throw it open to the floor. So any volunteers?
I think the floor hasn't had their coffee yet.
Oh, was there a break planned?
No.
I didn't miss that. Yeah, sorry, I thought I might have missed that. I'm very conscious that people working on European Central Time are probably getting very hungry. So, but if there's any points that people want to make, if not, that's fine too.
Just from my point of view, Aidan, I think this is the start of a conversation. I learned a lot today just from listening to people's input from, as I was trying to say at the start, from such a wide geographic span and political and economic span as well. You know, the Euroscepticism does not seem to be an issue for us in Ireland.
No.
I think we still have something like a European approval rating in the high 80s, as far as I can remember from what I read recently. So, and Brexit is probably one of the things that is going to affect us more than anybody else in the EU. So it's a very local concern. But there are other issues that we seem to be, I know we'll say, for instance, maybe Greece and Hungary, what's become a migrant issue is something that's very important and very much to the fore in those countries. And we're at the end of the chain when it comes to issues around migration. And it's how Europe can, I don't want to say flatten the curve, but distribute what are local problems into a more, I don't know, even, maybe that makes things maybe it makes things more just, but more difficult, because politicians think in local terms and in short term. And I think the futures, we're talking about the futures extending into, when you think about the climate emergency, we're talking long term. And who has the power, or who's going to have the courage to make some very difficult decisions that have to happen coming down the line. But they're just some reflections on what I've heard this morning. I don't know if that makes anybody.
I think it does, yeah. I think like clearly the partners here are better placed to focus on the project objectives, you know, they know best how to achieve them. But it's important to be conscious of the bigger issues running in the background. So there's a couple of things that struck me. Maybe I'll just put them out and see what people think, and they might maybe also link up with what Paul said and others have said in their presentations. The first one that struck me was social inclusion. There really is an urgent need to press ahead with that. It's intolerable to have the degree of poverty we have in Europe, and it's not acceptable that past objectives were never met, like to take 20 million people out of poverty. It didn't work, so what did they do next? They reduced the target to 15 million. That's not acceptable, you know. That's not a way to achieve a target. Secondly, the need for social and political education. I mean, there's a lot of stuff around nowadays, whether it's ranging from anti-vax to kind of xenophobia, which is coming from sheer ignorance. So there's a need for greater social and political education, and universities linking to community needs is a way of combating that. And the concept of a community is a very good one. Then the changes from the climate breakdown. It was very interesting to hear from Hungary, from Eva in Hungary, that it's pointless having massive reserves of a commodity that endangers the planet. And how do you change your economy around to try and, you know, re-emerge in a different way? And some of the lessons maybe from Sweden in terms of the green energy and the potential for jobs for young people. I mean, this is young people's futures, and they're very conscious of that. So we need to be contributing to a better future for them. And there's an urgency about it, as we've seen after the climate impacts over the summer. And then finally, this European identity, you know, this, you know, it's not insurmountable to have different cultures. I mean, Serbia gave a very good example of the mix of cultures in that area of Serbia. I don't know, many different languages, even one language I'd never heard of, but so it can be done, and we can celebrate difference rather than use it as to target our own warped xenophobia. So there's possibilities around that, and I think a lot of these projects kind of link into that. And so apart from the immediate outcomes, there are broader ones as well.
Hi, Aidan. I want to say something, if it's okay.
Yep.
I want to speak about two things. First, I think that we all have been organizing or setting up organizations, and we know that when you are doing the document or the constitution, whatever you call it, it's always beautiful, because otherwise people won't join your organization. But there's something we have to keep in our mind every time when we do that. We have to learn about people joining, but when people start to leave, we have to look as well where people are living, so that we can adjust what we are doing. If I go back to what Paul at his presentation, if you look at this second article when they are setting up the EU, you can see how it's beautiful, how speak about how they're gonna take care of people, you know. But one of my thought is that maybe, you see, there were, I think that 4 or 5 countries who started that. Those countries have kind of the same understanding about what they want to do, and the people, the citizens of the countries were somehow at the same level of poverty or richness, if you want. But then more countries joined, and those countries had different issues. So I wonder, now that there have been Brexit, they are Eurosceptic. I wonder if it's not the time to sit down again and see if really what they had in the constitution, if it's still there. Because if you see people start to leave, there's a reason they are leaving. So you have to look up after that. So I think that's when I came to this project. I think that this project is very good because I myself have been involved in research, in community-based research. And I have seen how when you involve people who are affected by the issue, as a researcher, when you involve them since the beginning, how really they show you that actually you have been, that maybe have been taking road that bring people nowhere. Because those people tell you that, look, why are you looking at A issue? While actually for us, we think that B issue is better than that. So I think that this project is going to be good because people who are the citizen, they are going to talk about what they think about what's going on. And maybe they're going to tell politicians, say that, look, I think that we are going in the wrong direction. I think that there's something, there's what we call an elephant in the room. We have to look at that, and maybe we help them to, if they are really serious about listening to people, to citizens, then maybe this can show them that actually, there's some adjustment we can do to make EU the EU we wanted. Thank you.
Thanks, Alphonse. Anybody else?
I just wanted to reflect on what Alphonse has actually said about, I suppose in Ireland, those of us of a certain generation will have grown up with European funding. We got to go to college because we had DSF funding. Ireland has been a beneficiary of a significant amount of funding that has come from Europe. And so our experience, it's interesting, Derek, when you spoke about the percentage of people in Ireland who are very satisfied with Europe, it's quite another thing to see. I do think that we, within our younger generation, so we have a generational sort of lapse now, a memory lapse, because anybody maybe 25 years or younger, they may not actually relate to Europe and European ideals and maybe don't see a benefit in the benefit that we saw, a tangible one. And I wonder in Ireland, with the way our media is and with how easy it was in the UK to put out a message and for that message to spread and for a vote to go through, just scrape through, and how easy it can happen here in Ireland as well. So I think what's very interesting about our project as well is that we have a unique opportunity to involve a generation who are younger and more digitally, who are digital what's the word, our natives, digital natives, and to use it to kind of, to work together and to identify issues which also impact on that younger generation as well, because sometimes I think a lot of people involved in kind of, in universities as well. We, for those of us who are, involved in the delivery of things in universities, generally speaking, we're of a certain generation. So they're definitely, it's really interesting to have across the age range. And also, if you look at some of the groups that, say, for example, Eva will work with, to see how there'll be a different experience among an older generation, older than I am, who maybe have seen the aftermath of the Second World War and how that impacted on them, and to have that opportunity for them to talk and to discuss this with the younger generation who've grown up in a very different sort of Europe. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Any other comments?
I cannot agree more with Jennifer regarding, the young generation, the younger ones. Myself is 47 and I'm very aware of the Europe I was brought up during the Soviet regime. So I still have goosebumps when I'm in the at the borders or in the transit of the airports, that I'm thrilled that I'm allowed to travel. Okay, regardless of COVID, of course, but my students have the mindset about the European Union, you know, as an opportunity to leave Hungary and work abroad. So this is what the European Union means to them, you know, the free movement of people. So our aim indeed is to give some generational input about what it means to be really free, you know, and to be able to cooperate like with this project. It's an opportunity for all of us to be part of this European ethos. So our main goal or target is to make active citizenship and the European Union's future, or Europe's future, more accessible. So not to have just buzzwords flying around, you know, because my students are really fed up with the PR, you know. They are not happy at all, but what is reflected, you know, about Europe or the European Union. But still, they want to be part of it. So this is going to be our mission, you know, to make them really understand that it's an asset. It's not a given thing. It's been fought for. Thinking about Central and Eastern Europe. So this is just in a nutshell that I want to give you as a reflection. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Eva. It's a really important point. Liberty can be lost so quickly. Any other points?
I think that I can just I have one reflection. I was thinking of what you said, Jennifer, and I agreed to that. It's a very thin line in what has happened and what will happen. And I think that inclusiveness is the key. I think that people feeling excluded in society are very prone to anti-democratic movements and things like that. So I think it's really important to make people feel they are included into society and that they have a voice and that they have someone to listen to them when they say something. So I think that is the key.
Thanks, Teresa. Yes, participation is vital, you know, for the development of democracy. Any other?
Hi. If it's okay to say, I probably have a concern, I suppose, being a community development worker and working with a local and at a national level with marginalised women. And I suppose I'm really interested in this for our organisation, and that's why I was taking part. But I also, I suppose, have concerns around the fact that, you know, when you're working with people with disadvantage and that are marginalised, trying to get them to engage and participate is always a challenge. You know, we see it every 4 or 5 years around our local and national elections. People don't see, well, why should we vote? You know, nothing ever changes for us because, of course, they're concerned with living from day to day, week to week, because, you know, they're dealing with poverty, they're dealing with you know, being on the outskirts, I suppose, if you want to say. And I suppose I'm not trying to put a dampener on it. I'm just I'm listening, and it's really, really interesting. But I suppose I'm thinking of the concern I have is how to get people engaged when it's not through, you know, higher education and stuff like that. Because, you know, again, we have very low rates of progression onto higher education in our areas, and, you know, very low rates of, as I said, voting in elections. So it's just, I suppose I'm just putting it out there that that's where I'm coming from as well, but not to try and put a dampener on anything, but that would be a concern for me.
Thanks, Edna. Oh, you haven't put a dampener on anything. That's the purpose of community work, is moving from the real to the ideal, isn't it? So it's a positive message. Yes, Alexia?
Yeah, if I may, hi, my name is Alexei Kishugas. I'm an associate professor of sociology at the Faculty of Philosophy in Novi Sad, Serbia. I just wanted to add one interesting point concerning Europe. Serbia is in a peculiar situation since it's not an EU member, and the EU enthusiasm is still waning, and it's on its historical low right now. The numbers are around 50%, if I'm not mistaken. And although we are very far, perhaps even decades from membership, so bearing this in mind, you have an active campaign of identity politics, ethno-nationalism, and the feelings of resentment even towards Europe, etc. So with zero direct experience of being inside EU, lots of Serbian citizens are actually against membership, and regardless of their age, which was mentioned here, but regarding and closely linked to their class positions and to their education. So this specific, resentment towards Europe is something that is rather present in our society and in the most popular media in Serbia, unfortunately, of course.
Yeah. And there's you were saying there's very little difference between young people and older generations.
Well, the main divide towards their stance towards Europe is, in my personal opinion, is not the age. You have younger and the older folks which are enthusiastic about EU membership, and the young and the older ones which are against it on basis of practical nationalism.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Just to pick up on what Alexius said there, I think it's interesting if the age is important, I think, and age was important in the Brexit debate, and it was the older people who got that over the line, if you want to say. It's that generation who remembered an empire. And I actually think I'm feeling quite uncomfortable at the moment when I'm listening to the Olympics, because it just, every time you put on the telly, I wouldn't particularly think that Ireland is exceptionally a nationalist country, but it's wall to wall, medal winning and who's got this, and if you just think about that, that's part of a wider discourse around nationalism. We saw in the European Championships. We know what goes on. It ties into the idea about separation and not about what we have in common. And so even though people feel very proud about the gold medals and the silver medals and everything else, I'm actually starting to think that forget about what Trump said about America first, and forget about Europe first. It's Earth first at the moment. That's what we need to be concentrating on. And that's not the message that's coming across. The message is still around nationalism, still around the nation state. And I think in Europe, we have an idea, and I really liked what Ulrika was saying about from Orcraft, owning Europe or owning your Europe. I thought that's a really key idea for us to, whether we're in the EU or whether we're just members of the wider continent of Europe, is to understand that we have to act in concert. That's just something that came up for me today.
Yeah. The individualism, not entirely unconnected to the neoliberal model we've been pushing for decades.
Exactly.
Okay. Any final comments? Are we okay? Because it's I don't want to rush people or anything. If anyone has any comments, please just make your point. But it is almost 12 o'clock Irish time, which is 1 o'clock European Central Time. So if people are okay, maybe I'll just move to wind up. Is that okay with people? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'm first of all, thanks to everybody who participated today. both internally the partners who have a lot of work in the afternoon, so we don't want to hold them up, but also all the externals who participated from universities and other organizations or the partner organizations. Thanks for that. And your inputs were really interesting, particularly in that discussion piece there. I won't say very little more because I've said enough in terms of summarizing some of the points from the presentations. I think they're really interesting. I'd like to read more about them, and hopefully the PowerPoints and the videos will be on the website, because I'd really like to go into them, because it's only as a project gets underway that, you know, the fascinating points begin to emerge. Particularly, there were some things that particularly struck me, I suppose, you know, the economic issues in terms of transitioning to a green economy are really interesting, and the challenges that poses for some countries, like Hungary is a good example. The desperate need to get away from this anti-intellectualism and to begin to have good political and social learning re-established. And I think the links between universities where thinking takes place and organised civil society organisations working on the ground who have a vast experience. And I'm a great believer in building theory from the bottom up. You know, you base your theory on what actually happens. Let's be empirical about these things, and then learn from that, because that's the sure way of learning. So I think that's very heartening. So if that's okay, sorry, any other points now? No. Okay, if that's okay, then we'll bring this to an end, and people can have a lunch, hopefully, or an early lunch if you're in Ireland. And the second part of the day then is focused on it's a workshop around governance, as I gather. So we don't want to hold that up. So again, I'd like to finish by thanking everybody, all the inputters, all the presentations that people put together, and all the ancillary comments from other attendees. Thank you very much.